The coronavirus pandemic has impacted many aspects of our lives, not least of all how we travel. With public transport looking less appealing in the coming summer months, now's the perfect time to commute by motorcycle. Biking is socially distanced by its very nature, and you won't get held up by traffic, stung by the C-charge, or struggle for parking like you would in a car. So in this series of 6 videos, I'll tell you everything you need to know in order to start travelling to work by motorcycle. And today we'll start with the basics, the best types of bike for commuting. But before we get started, I'd like to say a big thank you to Lynn Triumph for sponsoring this series. They've got locations in Ashford, Romford, Watford, and the central London shop in Vauxhall where most of this video was filmed. So they're perfectly positioned to serve commuters all across London. I've personally visited 3 of the 4 shops and have always found the staff to be super helpful, knowledgeable and friendly. There are links to their website, social media and online shop in the description below. First up, let's take a look at the naked motorcycle genre, which is something you see a lot of in the parking bays of central London. Essentially, a naked bike is somewhat sporty, but without the bodywork and uncompromising riding position of a full-on sports bike. My buddy Tim is demonstrating here with the 2020 Triumph Street Triple RS, which is one of the best performers in this class. I was lucky enough to spend a couple of days riding it at the press launch last year, and it really is a great all-rounder. The 765cc triple cylinder engine has a beautiful sound, and it's a great compromise of mid-range pull, but also enough top-end power to keep you entertained with a peak of 121 horsepower, delivered at 11,750 RPM. Showa forks, an Öhlins shock, and Brembo Stylema brakes all make for a great handling bike with plenty of stopping power too. But it offers practicality as well, with the 5-inch TFT dash able to connect to your phone over Bluetooth to enable turn-by-turn nav, and the ability to control phone calls and music through a Bluetooth headset, all of which of course can come in handy during the working week. To me, the reasons that naked bikes like the Street Triple make such popular commuters are threefold. Firstly, most of us don't have the luxury of owning multiple bikes, and a naked like this will do a bit of everything. So as much as it's happy carting you and your laptop around the city, if you do fancy doing some sportier riding at the weekend, it'll absolutely lap it up and you won't get left behind by your mates. Strap some soft luggage on, and if you can cope with the wind blast, you can also do a bit of weekend touring. There's plenty of power there to zip along the motorway with ease. Secondly, despite a naked bike's ability to carve up corners, the riding position is far more comfortable and practical than an equivalent sports bike. Foot pegs tend to be a little lower in order to open up the knee angle, bars are higher so that you don't have to reach so far forward, and the extra width helps with both ergonomics and maneuverability. Not only will a more upright posture be easier on your back when you're riding every weekday, but it also helps you to look ahead over the traffic. Lastly, with a bike like the Street Triple RS weighing just 166 kilograms dry, and with a reasonable seat height of 810 millimeters, naked bikes tend to be relatively small, light and nimble. This can help with filtering and lane splitting, low-speed maneuvers, and parking your bike in a tight spot. And this stuff is super important when commuting by motorcycle. If you don't feel confident making progress through the traffic because your bike is a little on the tall or heavy side, then you're missing out on one of the major benefits of commuting by bike. In London, for example, I've found that filtering and lane splitting can pretty much halve your journey time. So that's the nakeds: fast, nimble, comfortable and versatile. But what if you fancy something a little more old school? Let me introduce you to the retros. This category of motorcycle is made up of all sorts of standard bikes, scramblers, cafe racers, cruisers and bobbers. As you can see, Triumph are particularly well stocked in this area with 10 models currently in their modern classic range. We chose the Speed Twin to film with because honestly, having borrowed one from Triumph for a few weeks last year, I'd say that if I had to buy a Triumph retro today for commuting around London, it'd be this bike. It's comfortable and easy to ride around town, but also packs a punch with 96 horsepower on tap. Combined with the twin Brembo brakes up front and a decent stock suspension setup, it makes for an awesome ride if you do get out of the city and onto an open stretch. So why would you choose one of these retro-style bikes for your daily ride to and from work? The looks and character are a major factor for some owners, preferring the classic aesthetic of yesteryear to the more angular and busy style of many modern motorcycles. Styling isn't that important to everyone, but I think there's something to be said for opening the garage every morning to a bike you enjoy looking at. Triumph have done a great job on the Bonneville range of concealing some of the modern components to maintain the old school style. The vertical radiator, for example, is tucked up against the frame to minimise its presence, so it pretty much looks like an old air-cooled bike from a distance. And the catalyzer is neatly hidden too, stowed away under the front of the engine, with the joint in the exhaust headers masked with a shield to make them look like classic straight-through pipes. Although there are a few exceptions, across the whole retro motorcycle market, you'll tend to find a lot of twin-cylinder engines. This configuration typically gives you plenty of torque right down from the bottom of the rev range. The result is strong acceleration without having to rev the bike hard, which can come in handy as a commuter when you're trying to get ahead of the traffic or pulling away from the lights. There's something deeply satisfying about the way a torquey twin catapults you forward without having to rev its nuts off. To me, it's the perfect power delivery for riding around town. The last benefit of a retro like the Speed Twin, I'd argue, is its relative simplicity. Some of us love our gadgets and tech, but I know there are plenty of bikers who just like to enjoy the ride and take in their surroundings. Retros are less likely to come with sat-nav and endless menus of rider aids to tweak, and I think they're often all the better for it. But where the retros and nakeds might come up a little short is if you have to do a decent stretch of motorway riding to get into the city in the first place. Neither offers much in the way of wind protection, and this can be especially uncomfortable if you plan to commute by bike year round. So for the rider who needs to munch a few miles on the motorway every day, I'd probably recommend something like an adventure bike. Essentially the 4x4 of the motorcycle world, they tend to be jacked up and rugged and are built for covering longer distances on a wide range of terrains. We borrowed the Tiger 900 GT Pro from Triumph London as it's slightly more road biased than their rally models. The 888cc triple puts out a respectable 94 horsepower, which is plenty for blasting up and down the motorway. The adjustable screen and wide shoulders give you decent wind protection, brakes are super premium Brembo style emmers, and there's even an electronically adjustable shock, which is great for dialing in your ride on the fly. If you do part of your commute with a passenger, for example, when they hop off you can adjust the preload without getting off the bike so that it's perfectly set again for solo riding. Honestly, I think a middleweight adventure bike makes the perfect all-season all-rounder. Almost all of them come with a screen like the Tigers, the bodywork tends to be substantial, and there are often handguards available. These features combined will really take the sting out of a motorway ride on a cold day, and if you're planning to ride in the rain, then of course you're going to stay considerably drier. The GT Pro is particularly good in this respect, as the handguards, heated grips, and heated rider and passenger seats all come as standard, so you should be toasty in all but the very worst winter conditions. And as much as I've just lauded the relative simplicity of the retros, adventure bikes will more likely appeal to the tech lover. They're built for all kinds of riding after all, and as a result they usually have the gadgets to deal with it. Take the Tiger 900 for example. In the GT Pro model, you get the 7-inch TFT display, which is beautifully done. Connect your phone and you'll get turn-by-turn nav from the My Triumph app, which is handy if your commuting often includes new locations. You can control music, calls, and even a GoPro from the illuminated switchgear in case you're an aspiring motovlogger. There's cruise control, cornering sensitive ABS and traction control, 5 riding modes, an up and down quick shifter, a tyre pressure monitoring system, additional fog lamps, and LED lighting all round. And that's on top of the heated grips and seats and electronically adjustable rear shock that we've already mentioned. With all that equipment comes a lot of flexibility. Throw on some hard luggage and you've got a serious touring machine. That luggage might come in handy anyway if you commute with a lot of gear or clothing. With the right tyres, a middleweight adventure bike is ripe for some light off-roading too. I tested the Tiger 900 Rally Pro on the press launch last year and it flattered even an inexperienced off-roader like myself, especially with the changes they've made to the firing intervals to give it more low-end pull. And although an adventure bike can't compete with the sports bike, there's still plenty of fun to be had if you want to push on a bit. There's usually decent power and the equipment tends to be well spec'd, so if you get the suspension set right, you can have a blast on the back roads. The only drawback is that adventure bikes do tend to be taller and more top heavy than other styles of motorcycle, which you'll notice especially at low speed. So if you don't feel comfortable with a bigger bike, it might not be for you, but all in all, given the wind protection, heated equipment, haulage capabilities, awesome tech and total flexibility, I'd personally pick the middleweight Adventure as my ultimate commuter. There are, however, 6 bikes in the Tiger 900 range, so in the next video in this series we'll take a look at all of those models and figure out the merits of each. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you commute? And if so, which bike did you choose? And with money no object, what would be the ultimate commuting motorcycle in your view? I'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and I'll catch you next time.